I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of Meet the People Who Are Changing the World. And I know usually we have ESP practitioners or people along that realm, but I'm really excited to introduce everybody to my friend Bailey Joe. And Bailey Joe has a really unique, well, it's unique to me. She has a unique focus. She is a fertility awareness educator. And you're probably saying, what does that mean? And she's going to tell us all about what that means. And a women's rite of passage facilitator dedicated to helping women reconnect with their bodies and cycles through science-based intuitive cycle tracking. And I just want to like get in there right away. So Bailey Joe, you guide women with all like really from A to Z with all of their fertility, their menstrual, like oh my gosh. Um, so I just want to say welcome first of all. I'm so excited that you're here. And Bailey Joe and I met in a GNM in the GNM world, and and I just really wanted to share her knowledge with my kiddos. Um, because it's like here, but you can lead a horse to water, right? You can't make them drink. So basically Bailey Joe is the water. And so if anybody here, you're the water. And I'm hoping that the people who are here are ready to drink. And so I'm going to shut up for a minute. What does that mean to be a fertility awareness educator?
Love that question. Okay, great. And thank you for the sweet introduction. So basically, I teach women who are in their reproductive years. Fertility awareness method is sort of pointless if you're no longer in your cycling years. But I teach women in their reproductive years how to chart their cycles for kind of name your goals. It's player's choice, either contraceptives, a contraceptive method, or helping to achieve conception. And then for anybody, whether either one of those two is your goals, charting for health is just sort of the overarching theme that like is accessible to everyone. So whether or not you are partnered, sexually active or not, FAM can serve you just with being able to understand your hormones on a day-to-day basis. So essentially fertility awareness method, the method that I teach, there are hundreds of different fertility awareness methods. I teach a symptothermal method, which is called cycle mapping, and it comes from the Wells School of Body Literacy. And symptothermal basically just means that we're tracking symptoms, primarily your cervical fluid. So that's that can be sticky all the way up to like an egg white texture of fluid that's very estrogenic, that is usually coming out of the vagina. It comes from the cervix, not actually the vaginal walls. And we observe that sign, the presence of cervical fluid, as an indication of our fertility, along with our basal body temperature. So this is like our core body temperature while we're sleeping. And typically, unless you have a more advanced wearable thermometer, like something like the temp drop, Aura ring does not count. Let me shout it from the rooftops. No Aura rings. But you can use a regular basal body temperature thermometer upon waking. So take your temperature first thing in the morning when you wake up, same time every day, and you will see if you are cycling, if you are ovulating, that prior to ovulation your temperatures will be in a low range, and after ovulation your temperatures are in a higher range. And so it's this temperature shift that confirms ovulation. And essentially the method that I teach, we have all kinds of rules about how to identify your fertile window, so that if you are trying to avoid a pregnancy, that you would not have unprotected sex during that fertile window. And if you are trying to achieve a pregnancy, you would go for it during that fertile window to optimize your chances of conception. That's fertility awareness in a nutshell. And like overarchingly, it just offers a woman this beautiful awareness of exactly where she's at each day. We are not solar beings like our male counterparts that have like a 24-hour hormone cycle. we have an infradian cycle or a lunar cycle where we go, a month long. There's all these fluctuations. And so I like to say that you can split the cycle into like two distinct phases. You have your follicular phase, which is everything from the first day of your menses up to the point of ovulation. And then from that's your follicular. And then from ovulation to your next menses would be your luteal phase. And then you can kind of break the cycle down a little bit more into your menstrual phase, your follicular phase, an ovulatory phase, and a luteal phase. And those are they kind of coincide with inner winter, inner spring, inner summer, and inner fall. And so having these awarenesses, it really helps you understand just like your feelings. Because so often we're just not taught this stuff. Most women are not raised with this knowledge of how your body and your hormone physiology actually works. And we have all kinds of fears about, oh, I can get pregnant anytime. And I don't know why I feel so emotional or whatever it is. There's just all of this, we kind of have blinders on about our own like inner knowing of like who we are and why we are. And so fertility awareness, I think that this practice, especially when it is truly like a daily, diligent, regimented thing, and you're keeping a record, you're writing everything down on a chart, that just gives you amazing data, but B, this like really solid inner awareness. And I know that there are a lot of women out there that practice sort of an intuitive version of this that's not necessarily evidence-based, and they're not necessarily charting, but they have an awareness of sort of how the cycle works. And they base this on like a 28-day cycle. And this is called rhythm method thinking. I'm sure you're aware, and maybe some of the audience is aware, that the 28-day menstrual cycle is a myth. It can happen. Yeah.
It's how I got my fourth baby.
Yeah. Right. I remember you telling me that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please. So it can happen, right? That's maybe what we would call the biological ideal if we're to start to go down the GNM track as well. It's biologically ideal for us to have a 28-day cycle, but there are so many reasons why we wouldn't. Conflict-related reasons, and then general, I do still hold true the maybe less GNM camp, that like even just being undernourished and overexercised can absolutely delay ovulation, even if there is no conflict, no brain psyche organ connection there. So there's a lot of things that can affect when our ovulation happens, whether it's coming early or late, if your cycles are shorter or longer than 28 days. But subscribing to that 28-day myth, if you are then using the assumption that, and this is kind of where like pop fam knowledge hurts people, or the rhythm method hurts people, is thinking that, well, I'm fertile from day 8 to 16 of my cycle. That's my fertile window, and I'm going to avoid during those days. And then after those days, I'm good to go. Well, in my case personally, right, I'd be pregnant if I was, or, I'd have had multiple children now, if that was the mode I was operating from, because for me, I typically don't ovulate until around day 20 of my cycle. I have slightly longer cycles because I run some sexual frustration programs. For those that are GNM aware, you might know what that means. Maybe we can get into that later. If not, it's not important for intro discussion here. But yeah, my fertile window is typically maybe more like a day 8 to day 24. I have these long follicular phases. And so if I wasn't paying attention to my cervical fluid and I was just using like a calendar, like just math to figure out, okay, well, day 1 of my period was here, and oh, well, I must have ovulated, so now I'm good. Incorrect. I could very much have cervical fluid still present. And what I didn't mention already, the big thing about cervical fluid is that it is basically sperm food. Sperm can live inside of cervical fluid for up to 6 days. That's kind of the general consensus. I think there are some fertility awareness educators out there that might be more conservative and say something like 10. Generally, the consensus is about 6 days. So you can have unprotected sex during your fertile window 6 days prior to ovulation, and those sperm will hang out and wait for that egg. And then the egg comes out and they go. And so you can, this is our brilliant, like, evolutionary design, to where, because that egg, it's only viable for like 12 to 24 hours. So if we only had a 12 to 24 hour window to conceive a child, and you had to line up your sexual intercourse with that window, and like, there would not be the human population that we have today. Like, we wouldn't have, grown as a species. So, and this is true for most mammals. So we have this extended period where our body produces a substance that can nourish sperm for that long, so that they can hang out, and they hang out in the cervical crypts, or as I like to call them, sperm hotels. And they just hang out there and they wait for that egg to come. And the release of progesterone signals the sperm, okay, start your journey, swim on up to the fallopian tube.
Bailey Joe, all right. So before we got on our call, we were talking about line dancing, and I said the place where I go line dancing, there's like all these women on the dance floor, and there's like all these guys standing around, like drinking their beers, like waiting for them to be done dancing. And I just had this image of like, oh my God, everything is the same, like all the way down to like that's why I was laughing so hard, because like it's just the same.
I'm like crying right now.
Right? Like, any of you have been line dancing, or but like just been like kind of like I don't know. I'm assuming it's like that other places, other types of, but yeah, crying over here.
Yeah, the women on the dance floor, the men kind of like hanging out,
They're just
waiting.
waiting.
Yeah. No, it's
Their
totally,
beer
it's
is like their cervical
completely,
fluid. They're just like that's keeping them going. They're just waiting for you to be ready. Okay.
yeah, it's absolutely biological at every level. It's mirrored in everything.
Okay, sorry. Again, I'm gonna try really hard not to interrupt you, but I had to say that. That
Oh
was
no,
so funny.
that was the best interruption. I love that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what you're saying is, see, this is all new to me. I didn't realize that the egg only had that very small window. So when you're saying the window of time, it's before the egg comes out, then that's all the time that the sperm hangs out and is doing its thing,
Mhm.
waiting to do its thing, I guess I should say. And
Correct.
then it's
Yeah.
like,
So that would be
okay,
like, if you were trying to conceive, you would want to time your intercourse for when that cervical fluid is most abundant. And typically, if you have, a history of charts and data to look back on, and your cycles are somewhat regular, we can start to determine, okay, like which 2 days might be the most optimal days for you to, do the deed and have semen exposure. Because depending on the man as well, if we're working with like low sperm motility or low sperm count, he needs to have usually like every other day ejaculations in order to build up his sperm concentration. And so we can start to time intercourse to optimize the chances for conception with when your fluids are going to be at their peak right before that egg actually comes out. Because let's say his sperm are a little bit weaker and they may not end up living that long, then we want to get as close to that actual ovulation as possible. And then, of course, for someone that's trying to avoid, we just want cervical fluid and semen to have no contact. And so
okay.
we have lots of a sexual buffet of options to utilize aside from penis and vagina sex, where there might be semen exposure. I am a fan of the withdrawal method. It gets a bad rep, but as long as the man that you're with knows what he's doing and he's not prone to being late with pulling out, then it is a trustworthy option for those that are comfortable with a little bit of risk. Because let's just lay it out here. Having sex makes babies. And sometimes accidents happen. He doesn't pull out in time, a condom breaks, whatever. So if you're engaging in heterosexual intercourse, you have to assume a little bit of responsibility for the risk that you're taking. And now in the method that I teach, we have something called the intention scale. So like a 0 or a 1 being like, I do not want to get pregnant at all, to a 10 being like, get me pregnant yesterday. And depending on where you are on that intention scale, one woman might make different choices than another.
Yeah.
And someone that's really comfortable with taking risks, she might have unprotected sex in the outer edges of her fertile window. She's maybe kind of like, we're not trying for another baby, but like if it happened, no big deal. And then you have people that are really, really strictly, I do not want to get pregnant at all. They are, completely abstinent during their fertile window. And possibly it depends. It depends on their comfort. Not that this would necessarily, it wouldn't be necessary if a woman had ovulated, closed her fertile window based on our rules, and then she's in her luteal phase before her next period. Depending on her comfort with risk, the partner that she's with, maybe she still wants to wear a condom. Totally fine. Like it's all about taking responsibility for your own choices.
Yeah.
And the good news is those that are in, long-term relationships with, men that they love, hopefully can really take advantage of that luteal phase after confirming ovulation, fertile window closed. Well, now you're in an infertile phase of your cycle. There's no chance that you can ovulate again once you've ovulated once. The presence of progesterone, which is the hormone that is high after ovulation, it's produced by a little tiny gland called the corpus luteum or luteum. And it's basically the gland that gets formed by the empty follicle. So the follicle releases the egg and then that turns into the corpus luteum. It's producing progesterone. It has a lifespan of about 12 to 16 days. And high progesterone suppresses your other cycle hormones like FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone, or LH, as well as estrogen. Estrogen does do another little like plateau, but it's not possible for you to ovulate again. The one caveat I will say is that you can release 2 eggs in one ovulatory event, which is how fraternal twins are made. And they can be released anywhere between like 12 to 24 hours of each other, but it's still considered like one ovulatory event. And then, after that, business is closed. Like you can't, there's no other egg that's going to release until you have the release of your endometrial lining, a menstrual period, and the hormone cycle begins again. Your brain, your pituitary gland, it's all interconnected, and one thing sends a signal to another to start the cascade of hormones again. And so we ride the estrogen wave up to ovulation. Hopefully it culminates in actual release of an egg. It doesn't always, which is why it's very important for women, I think, especially women who do have GNM knowledge, or they have sort of a general, even just without any GNM knowledge, just like general cycle knowledge. Just because you're seeing cervical fluid does not mean that you're ovulating. That's super important to take away from this. The only way that we can know if we're actually ovulating is if we have a basal body temperature practice. And I'll say it again, the Oura ring doesn't count. It's not a basal body temperature. Okay. But yeah, we can only confirm ovulation in retrospect. It's not something that can ever be predicted, because you can have this wave of estrogen and you can see abundant cervical fluid, but it might not be enough to actually peak, or you might be missing, you might have like low luteinizing hormone. And so the follicle never ruptures, you can never release that egg. Well, then your estrogen may take a nosedive again. And you might think, oh, well, now I'm in an infertile phase. I ovulated, I saw all this stuff. And now, but if you're not taking your temperatures and you're just doing cervical fluid, or you're just kind of going based on intuition and feeling, and do I feel estrogenic or not? You can be very misguided, and you can think you're in the clear to have unprotected sex, but then, hey, what do you know? Another fertile wave starts. Your body tries to ovulate again.
Okay.
So super important for women to actually have the whole symptothermal practice. Yeah, which is what I teach in my course, and guide women through actually really getting the technique down and understanding. And then I set them free, and they go on for the rest of their lives with this skill.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. Yeah, we say in like EFT that it's like a terrible business model, but our goal is always to get people to be self-reliant and to understand how to do this for themselves. And then we set them free. And then they just come back if they have like a, momentary lapse, or they, something big happens and they need kind of like course correction.
Mm-hmm.
And so in your case, I feel like that's probably similar. So you have a course that people can take online. People can, and I'll make sure we put all the links in like the show notes and like the description down below. Um, but I'm assuming, and you also work with people individually. I'm assuming some people probably need additional help, like
Mm-hmm.
support. I don't know. I should make an assumption. Those of you
So
watching.
So that's the beauty of the way that I think I've structured my course offering, is
Yeah.
that you get both. It is both self-paced and very high touch. So um, you get 7 hours of self-paced study materials. That's your class. That's where I'm giving you the lectures. They're all pre-recorded, and you can do them at your own pace. And then included in the purchase of the course is 3 sessions with me. As well as I do some like bi-monthly Q&A calls. So those are like group calls. Anybody that's currently doing the course can hop on. It's kind of like my office hour, and people can jump in and just ask me questions as they come up. We also have a Telegram channel if it's, something quick. Essentially, I recommend that they begin the course and they take a month to complete the 7 hours. You can do it in less if you have the time. And then begin charting. You would be prepared to start charting at, upon completion of the course at your first menses. You would do a whole month, whole cycle of your chart. And then we would schedule our first consultation where I review the chart with you. You send it to me, I make my notes, and I like basically just nitpick your technique, and make sure that everything is correct. And I also offer, some lifestyle counseling and support to, optimize cycle health in that if it's desired. It's not always desired, and that's totally okay. Some women just want to learn the technique and they're not interested in making any changes, and that's totally okay. So this is, you don't have to be on like a wellness journey. This can just be a thing that you do for birth control, and that's completely okay. But lots of women, do want to, relieve period pain and maybe shorten cycles that are really long, or, they're having, anovulatory cycles. And so we can look at that. I do like a thorough intake, and part of the way that I work, if it's desired, is to approach things from a German new medicine perspective. And so that is something that right now I'm kind of in limbo with the course, and how to integrate this. Generally speaking, my intake has like included a bunch of GNME type of questions that maybe seem really left field for someone who doesn't know anything about it, which is why I'm kind of considering modifying this a little bit. But at the moment, I just I integrate that into the one-on-one sessions where, I'm asking those types of questions to try to get at the root of like, well, what could be a conflict that's upstream from these symptoms that you're experiencing? And I do that kind of counseling as well, a little bit of detective work. And, as far as resolving conflicts, that's when I send them to you. because I'm not an EFT practitioner or, a hypnotherapist or past life regressionist. And I don't do any of that stuff. I'm just like, I'm your cycle and sex coach lady. And I then send you on to the appropriate healer who can help you resolve conflicts and, get everything all in the bag.
Get in the bag. I just want to say from like, this is such important information for all women to have. I mean, I'm at the end of that period. Like, I'm not really in a place where it wouldn't make sense for me to track it anymore. But but this innate wisdom is our birthright, and it really, I mean, I know we've heard people say like your birthright wisdom has been stolen from you, and it, it's not wrong. Um, this is There's something very sacred, and the fact that you're giving this gift back to women at all ages. I mean, it's really sacred work. Like, it's really, really incredible work that you're doing. I know I've sent a handful of my own young adult clients who I've worked with who are like, oh, I had to get put on the pill, and I don't want to be on the pill. I don't want this, but there's no other choice. Like, that's kind of what women are presented with. It's like, well, you either abstain or you use condoms or you get on the pill. Like, that's kind of, I mean, and then there's the IUD, and then you won't get any period, there's all these things that are like involve harming the women. And there's so many things. I feel like there's a whole other conversation is like what all that does to us as women, and oh my gosh, and then we go into the whole, but to stay centered. So in your work, like what you're doing is kind of like cracking open this, you're changing this paradigm. Like it's so incredibly, when I talk about how this podcast is all about highlighting people who are changing the world and making a difference in the world, you are making such a big difference in the world, by empowering these different women and giving them back their inner wisdom. It's awesome. And you also now have a podcast too. Like, there's so many ways that people can learn from you. It's not just like, I mean, so yes, I would seriously strongly encourage anyone here who's interested in this, by all means, get your hands on Bailey's course, 100%. And if you're not fully sure yet, I mean, you now have a podcast that people, and there's other, like, people can get on your newsletter. It's great. You have so many wonderful things that you're putting out there. It's really, it's so fun to follow you.
Aw.
No, seriously, it is. Um, so, and I'm not like a social media person. I'm assuming you're doing stuff on social media too. I wouldn't know. But
I'm trying. I'm really bad at that. I hate social media so much. I've made like one Instagram post.
okay. All right.
I'm
So
terrible at that.
then you're in good company. So, all right. So let me see. So who are the people that you mainly, I mean, I guess I feel like we've already kind of, I mean, you kind of work with the whole spectrum, right? Are you working with like young girls who are just starting to learn this, or does that feel too young? Like, what's kind of like a good age for people to come to you?
Yeah, I would say I am absolutely happy to work with teens.
Mhm.
I just need parental
Yeah.
consent,
Okay.
that they would be working with me if they're under 18. But my oldest client, I think, was in her 50s, and the youngest girls that I have worked with, not teaching fertility awareness method, but still teaching this cycle wisdom in a more simplified version. The youngest that I will usually teach is about 11. Kind of depends, of course. There are so many resources out there, amazing resources for youth, and I wouldn't say that that's my like strong suit and area of expertise, but I have dipped my toe in. I've done a few workshops for young girls, and I do kind of prefer for the young ones a more in-person group type of setting.
Yeah.
That's what I've done with them, and we keep it really fun and do a lot of artwork, and it keeps it a little bit more light, because they don't need a contraceptive method. I'm not teaching them how to prevent pregnancy at that age. But yeah, women that are sexually active, you know, however young that might be, I do think that with age comes some wisdom and responsibility. And so I'm not really a proponent of young girls who are, of course, ideally, hopefully unmarried, under 18. I don't think fertility awareness method is the right contraceptive choice for them, just because that frontal lobe is like, for most of them, there may be some young women that are exceptional and really responsible, but for most of them, they're not quite ready for the level of, personal radical responsibility that it takes to practice this. And they're finding themselves, figuring out their lives, and it's not always that easy to do. There was a period of time I learned FAM for myself when I was 19, and then from like 21, 22-ish, I didn't use fertility awareness for some about a year, maybe a little bit less, because I was in a really tumultuous relationship. I wasn't waking up at the same time every day, and I did not trust myself to practice FAM. And so I'll say that, like, fertility awareness method is not for everybody. If you are addicted to drugs, if you have a really chaotic lifestyle, and like, maybe even you're just like completely maxed out in brain space and you don't have the capacity to learn right now, okay, it's not for you. You need something else. And yeah, it's, it is an investment up front into learning. And so if somebody is not prepared to take that on, then it's not the right method. But yeah, to answer your question in a nutshell, I work with all ages on the reproductive cycling years spectrum. Post menopause, there's not much that I could do besides like lifestyle counseling to sort of support. We could go into like the GNM style things to support that. But if you don't have cycles, if you're not having periods and not ovulating anymore, then fertility awareness method doesn't really necessarily serve you. So sorry to those that missed their window. But yeah, it is a older women, I can still work that just in a more basic, lifestyle support kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't get much out of the course.
Right. And so, like, I'm already getting a sense of like what lights you up with this work and what kind of like, what gets you all excited. But is there anything you want to share, like vision, mission, purpose, like is there anything like that kind of gets you excited, or that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah. Well, I'm really on a mission to equip women that are interested in like medical sovereignty and sort of breaking up with the medical system for whatever reason. There's lots of reasons that women, or anybody, might decide to do that, because we kind of see them for what they are over there and we're not liking the vibe. We're like, there's mistrust here. You all have been abusing your power for too long, and how do I become my own doctor? And I really think that for women who are still cycling, if you're not practicing fertility awareness, you are missing the keystone piece to your wellness as a woman and your ability to be your own practitioner. So I'm really, really gung-ho to equip as many women who are kind of on that path. They're, curious about medical sovereignty. I want to teach as many women as possible in that domain. And then big picture, of course, I just want a world where it is presented as an option. From the time that we're young, I want this knowledge to be passed down from mother to daughter. and, like shared between sisters and really legitimized, because it is evidence-based. The method that I teach is associated with a study called the Petra Frank Herman study that was like a 20-year study in Germany. They were practicing a method in that study called Sensiplan, which is like just there's only like a couple of rules in the cycle mapping method that are different from Sensiplan. So we kind of use that study to like validate our method. And yeah, I want it to be seen as this legitimized option for birth control, but not only for birth control. I want women to know that there's just a power in having this awareness and being really in tune with your hormones, because your hormones are like everything. They're who you are. And if you're not really sure what your hormones are doing, then you can just feel kind of like lost. And so on my podcast, I interview women who practice fertility awareness. And I really like to get underneath the, this is my method of birth control thing, which is powerful and amazing in itself. And there can be lots of like juicy stories just from that alone. But I'm really interested in the gifts that go beyond just it being a method of birth control, and how it has, changed a woman's life, from the inside out because of that awareness. Like there's so many gifts that gives. I interviewed a woman who she's a psychotherapist, and she also had, her own story of really like incredible trials to overcome with her mental health. And she had a copper IUD and was diagnosed bipolar. And she actually removed it herself with the help of her husband. She removed her own IUD and then learned fertility awareness. And because of this knowledge of herself, she's able to mitigate her swings. Her mood is so much more understandable to her now. And it offers just such a window into like, yeah, if you have mental health struggles, here you go. Like it's not always just, oh, you're PMSing, right? But sometimes maybe it is, maybe you're having some premenstrual syndrome kind of stuff, and the simple awareness of it can be enough to just like tune you in, and then you don't bite your husband's head off or whatever. Like it can change relationships. It just has this sort of domino effect in, turning you on to other things that maybe you would have never considered doing, practices that you want to integrate to support your hormones. And then that like leads you down the garden path into like, all of a sudden you're like me and you wear 1,000 tinfoil hats and you're like learning and teaching German new medicine and completely rejecting all of the normal paradigms. And at the same time, it can also be as simple as it's your birth control method and it doesn't change your life in any other way. So the possibilities are endless. And with the podcast, I just really want to like share those stories through personal narrative, because I think there's something there for everybody. And I really think like learning through other women's stories is just such good medicine for us. And there's always so much to unpack from one woman's story. And it's just such a beautiful way to learn, like through personal narrative. I find that I learn best through just hearing someone's story. It's always really memorable for me. So yeah, that's kind of the goal with the podcast. And so ultimately, just equipping as many women as are ready for it with fertility awareness and keeping us out of the gynecologist.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I oh my gosh, so many things I want to say, but I just want to I just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing, and I just want to also acknowledge like there's such a legacy there with your podcast and with your course, because I talk with my students and my mentees and everyone, like think about the long game. Like think about, like, you're going to share a piece of information, like people can receive that for a decade or for longer, and like people are going to, and so it's not just like the thing that goes out right now, right? Like this is something that lives on. It's like a living document. It has this life to it, and people will be able to share it with each other. It's brilliant. I'm so glad that you're doing this, because it's really important work. As a person, as a woman who has had 4 children, and um yeah, like I really wish I had this information, 20 years ago. I feel like I would have been presenting it in a different way, right? But we do the best we can with what we have. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so I'm just glad that you're doing what you're doing, so that way other mothers and other women can empower themselves and claim their sovereignty. It's so so important. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Um, so I just want to thank you for being here. Is there anything else you want to share, or I'll put your website and all the things in the comments, but just in case you for some reason are watching this and can't access the description, Bailey Jo, what's your website? How can people access you?
Yeah, so my website is just baileyjo.co. It rhymes. It's not .com, it's .co. Baileyjo, BAILEYJO.co. And my Instagram, if you want to connect with me there, not that I post much, but it is an intention of mine to start posting more. It's baileyjo_FAE. So people can follow me there. And then I don't know when you'll be publishing this episode, but if it is before February 2nd, 2026, I have a class that I'm teaching with my creative partner, Kristen. She and I are going to be teaching on the 5 biological laws of German New Medicine, and kind of taking a look at female programs specifically as our examples to kind of talk through the 5 biological laws. And so that's going to be at 9 a.m. on February 2nd. So I can share with you the sign up
Yeah,
link or whatever, and you can send that out.
that would be great. Yeah, and that's Pacific time,
Yes.
I think, right? Yes. Yeah. All right. So I want to thank you for being here today. And thank you for all of you guys who are watching right now. And be sure to, comment, reach out to Bailey Jo. And yeah,
Having
thank you.
me. This was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you.